right. So today it is my pleasure as the moderator of this webcast to introduce our distinguished speakers. First is Stephen Partridge. He is Vice President of Strategy, Research, and Workforce Innovation at Northern Virginia Community College. He is joined with his colleague, Teresa Sweeney, who is the Director of Office of Grants, also at Northern Virginia Community College. And a special shout out to the president of Northern Virginia Community College, President Ann Kress, who is also part of the CCPI project. She serves as chair of the regional network for the Northeast. Next, we're joined from our colleagues in California from Allen Hancock College, Dr. Leanne McNulty, who is Director of Institutional Grants, along with her colleague, Professor Erin Currier, Coordinator and Assistant Professor of Agriculture. And again, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne. I'm the co-PI of the CCPI STEM project. It's also my honor to be the principal investigator for the Force ATE project, which is a mentoring initiative in the ATE community, and we focus on cybersecurity and computing education. I'm also Senior Professor Emerita of Computer Science and Cybersecurity at a community college in New Jersey called Union College. Okay, so looks like we're up to 56 participants. All right, so today's topics, we're going to have our presenters from Northern Virginia Community College talk to us about labor market intelligence and the impact that it has had on their institution and surrounding community. Northern Virginia Community College is a large community college located on the East Coast with approximately 75,000 students, which includes credit and non-credit. They're one of the 23 colleges in the Virginia Community College system, and I believe they have numerous campuses. So I'll let them tell you how many campuses they have. Allen Hancock College will talk to you about their grant success from the National Science Foundation and the impact that it's had on their students, their college, and their workforce. They're a small community college on the West Coast. Okay, so we have both coasts represented, and they serve approximately 11,000 students. They have 4 locations. Their main campus is located in Santa Maria. They have another center in Lopok and Santa Ynez Valley and Vandenberg Space Force Base Center. So after they're done presenting, we'll have a period for question and answers, and then we'll have a little Zoom poll for your feedback. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Stephen from Northern Virginia Community College.
Great. Thank you, Beth. Thanks for having us today. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on which coast you're on. We're going to go a little through the slides in the next 10 minutes to try and make sure you've got time for questions at the end. Again, Steve Partridge, Vice President, Strategy, Research, and Workforce here at NOVA. Next slide. I'm going to talk a little about labor market data. I know every school probably on this call has some sort of data set that they use when applying for grants or making determinations if you want to launch new programs or sunset some. When I got to NOVA 8 years ago, we had what was at the time called Burning Glass, now it's Lightcast, subscription. And it kind of sat on a shelf and people would just sort of go to it when they needed it for program data reviews or a grant. But we really didn't totally take full use of it. And so when I got here, we actually hired our first person to create our new labor market analytics team. And it's up to 3 people now. And that team does nothing but crunch labor market data. And when I first started, it was sort of my tool to say yes and no to people when we got approached to launch new programs. A business might come to us and say, we need students. Would you create a new program for us? And we'd look at the labor market data and say, yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense, or it does make a lot of sense. But as the college sort of started pushing out this information, all of a sudden the requests just went up. And that's why we had to add additional staff. We started using it for career navigation more consistently. Our career advisors often used and cited job growth, but it was very haphazard where they got their information before. So we started to sort of standardize that approach. We also used it with our workforce boards. We provide all the labor market data to all the dislocated workers in our workforce system. We provide it to our K-12 system. And we create infographics, obviously targeting different age groups. to really help people understand where the job growth is in Northern Virginia. Because we have started to see ourselves a little different than just an education provider. We really are trying to be the group that provides sort of directionality about where the jobs are going, what type of skills to be successful in future jobs. And as you all know, AI is sort of clouding the future a little about what jobs are going to grow and what jobs are going to exist 10, 20 years from now. But by staying on that cutting edge and looking at the data and talking with businesses, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but that's really how we're sort of repositioning the college as a whole to really be that group that owns the labor market data system here in Northern Virginia. Next slide, please. So I'll give you a little overview, and many of you may already know this. There's sort of different buckets of labor market data. There's sort of the economic data about, what are the job openings in your community, what's your unemployment rate, your GDP, average wages, cost of living, and that sort of informs the entire system of really understanding in which context we work. Same with educational data. We know how many students we graduate and what degrees every year, but we also track what all the universities around the region are graduating and who is in their pipeline. We also look at the K-12 system data. Who's in the pipeline? Is the K-12 system growing? Is it shrinking? What are they indicating their areas of interest at decision points along their educational journey in K-12? And then demographic information. What is the average housing cost? What is our in-migration, out-migration, commuting patterns? A lot of the people that work in Northern Virginia do not live in Northern Virginia. We have to understand that because we'll hear from employers about their workforce and they say they want a certain program started. When you look at their particular workforce, you might find most of them live outside our service area, might be served by another community college who more likely would be the one to provide that training. So we do coordinate all that across our region and with other localities in DC and Maryland. Next slide. So the different sources of data, as you probably all know, there's federal sources, there's state data that is collected using Wagner-Pfizer dollars, and often the state system feeds into the federal system. And then there's proprietary system. That's the CCPI-Cast data that we subscribe to. We pay an annual fee for that, and it gives us access to all the job posting data where we can slice and dice it to say, here's the jobs posted in Northern Virginia. How many of them require a bachelor's, associate? How many require certain types of skill sets or credentials? And how do our degrees map up to those? The one thing about the state and federal systems is they're a little looking backwards. Often that data is slow to come in. So when the data does come out, it's often a couple quarters behind us. It also doesn't always give us the transparency we'd like. We use a lot of that data with like UI wages to see how our students are doing, because we can track, and you probably can too in your states, you can see when your students graduate sort of what their earnings are in aggregate a few years after they graduate, but it doesn't always give you the window into the type of jobs your students hold. You may know they're in a certain industry, but is that IT student that says is working for Starbucks a barista, or are they in their IT department? And you can make some guessing about their wages, but we really like to know as much about what our students are doing as possible. So we've been pushing our legislature to look at how we could add occupational codes to what is collected in UI, so it would give us better transparency to see if students are ending up where we want them to end up. Next slide. So general considerations. One thing that this call is making very clear is that there's different size organizations. There's big colleges, and we fortunately have the resources to have a 3-person team. But I will guarantee in every community, in every state, there's an office that does this. At the state level, there's always an office, but maybe you need something that would give you a little more granularity in your programming that they don't have the resources. But there's probably a chamber, a workforce board, economic development agency that you could partner with to sort of share the costs and do a more deeper dive. That's one thing we've really tried to do. Is we don't want to reinvent the wheel in Northern Virginia. So we sort of staked out that we'll work with the workforce boards, and we have 2 boards in our region. K-12 too, we want to provide them that real-time data, but we want them not spending critical dollars that we want to go into education doing labor market. So we provide that to them. So there's ways to share costs. You can get all this. But again, it's always sort of really figuring out what you want to use it for. And again, who's providing it if you can't provide it yourself. Next slide. Now, data is really good. But again, I told you it's not always everything. You have to test sometimes this data to see if it's really true, because a lot of it's backwards looking. And so every year we do an annual survey of businesses across our region to really test the data. What are your pain points in hiring? What industries are really struggling to find the right talent match for what they need? And that way we can test the data, because we found in the past, you'll see trends develop in the past that you might jump on to only find that industry was making a change that wasn't sustainable. We see this a lot in healthcare. When Medicare payments change, they'll use different types of resources and personnel, and they'll hire a lot of maybe LPNs at one time, and then 5 years later, they're laying off LPNs and hiring CNAs or more nurses. So you really have to stay in constant contact with industry to really make sure this data doesn't lead you down the wrong assumption. Next slide. So one way we try to make it, Nova, very simple for businesses to engage with us is we started a first of its kind that we could find. It's sort of a model with higher ed in the 4 years, but not as much in the 2 year. We wanted to have an employer engagement center. So this is our front door to the college. We wanted to make sure business knew we were open for business because we want them hiring our students. We want internships. But again, we want to test that data. So we often sit down with businesses, not only in their advisory boards, but one-on-one just to talk about industry trends. We have a future of work committee actually that meets quarterly with our president, and it's the head of our Federal Reserve out of Richmond and CEOs from across the region that are talking about things like AI and what impact that'll be in education over the coming 4 to 5 years. We also launched our guaranteed interview programs, making sure our students have clear market signals that these are programs in demand. And these sunset over time. You'll have a guaranteed interview program that all of a sudden disappears because industry is changing focus, and we can't guarantee that students coming out of that pipeline are going to have jobs. So I think one thing is key. If you build the labor market side, you have to have a constant engagement with businesses to test the data. Next slide. And finally, I just want a shout out to Nova. Harvard University came out with a book last year that highlights 5 community colleges across the country and sort of digs down into what makes them successful. And it really is about leadership, obviously, our president, who was recognized on the call earlier, but it's focused on your regional industries, it's focused on employment outcomes, and it's about deep relationships with employers. We actually have started creating MOUs with key employers in our area to really test and pilot projects. We have an MOU with AWS, which is Amazon Web Services, which is one of our largest employers. And we're launching several others with employers in the area that really allows us to work together in ways that we might not do with every employer because they hire so many of our students. And really, they're driving our local economy. So we really want to be on the cutting edge of what's next. And now to talk a little more about the grants, I'm going to jump to the next slide and turn it over to my colleague, Teresa.
Thank you, Steve. Good afternoon, everyone. Nova's history with NSF grants began about 10 years ago. We started slowly, as most people do, with 1 or 2 applications a year for a few years. And as we experienced success and the emphasis on STEM education starting in K-12 through higher ed increased, so did our STEM programs and our grant applications. At this point, we've won 21 grants, and we have several pending. And this group, of course, is particularly interested in the ATE program because community colleges are the lead applicants. And ATE grants account for almost 25% of our applications and our awards. But I want to mention that we've also had success with the NSF Improving Undergraduate STEM Education and STEM Scholarship grants, and encourage colleges to look at those too. Currently, we have entire programs funded by these NSF grants at Nova, particularly the outreach programs to K-12 students and wraparound services for Nova students in the STEM-related pathways. Some of the programs that are grant funded here include summer camps, bridge programs, and we have a Fab Lab product design incubator. So if you're interested in seeing some of our current projects, you can find them on our website. Next slide, please. To tie the type of LMI data that Steve just talked about to our proposals, one thing I always tell, particularly the novices in developing grant proposals, is that it really is a cross between a research paper and a business plan. You need to make the case for the project that's being proposed using relevant and meaningful data, which is part of your research. And LMI data is required for any RFP from any funder that emphasizes education and training that's related to industry needs and employment outcomes. So it's not just NSF, but it's the Department of Labor, Commerce, Education, and other funders. Since there are so many types and sources of research and data, I've listed here some of the parameters that we focus on that are most useful for proposals. First of all, the timeliness and the accuracy of data matters. Some industries and job skills are changing so rapidly that data older than 3 years are not relevant. Secondly, the data should reflect the same geographic region as the area to be served by the grant project. Third, you need to identify who this project will serve and give a realistic estimate of how many people you actually can serve based on your current and future capacity. And finally, all of this data should relate to each other. What types of jobs are available? What knowledge and skills are needed for those jobs? What degree and training programs you offer related to the required knowledge and skills? And what do you propose to enhance or create so that your students are equipped to get those jobs? Next slide. This is just one example of how we applied LMI data to a recent grant proposal, which we won, or I wouldn't be highlighting it. So these are a few points from that ATE project. And reflected on what I just mentioned about using the data in a good progression, in our proposal, we got close to home in our rationale by using the state data to set the stage for the regional data. And then even more specifically, we used data from the biotechnology industry, since that's the focus of the project. We named specific companies that operate in our region. And as much as possible, we used data from the previous 3 years, plus forecasting data related to job growth and the need in the biotechnology industry. We ended our rationale section with data on the specific types of jobs in the biotechnology industry, which current NOVA degrees and certifications relate to those jobs, any changes we plan to make to those degrees and pathways to be more closely aligned with the necessary job skills, and at least 2 or 3 years worth of student data to show trends that relate to the outcomes that we're predicting we will achieve for all the educational offerings in our biotechnology program. And that's my emphasis today on that particular grant.
Thank you very much, Stephen and Teresa. Are there any questions for Stephen and Teresa that you could put in the chat before we move on to Allen Hancock College? Any questions come to mind that you could put in the chat? What I'm going to do is read their impressive bios while you think about any questions. So Stephen, as we said, is Vice President of Strategy, Research and Workforce Innovation at NOVA. In his role, he leads the NOVA's corporate and workforce engagement, non-credit education, marketing, branding, and communications teams, career services, grant development, event services, and institutional research. When do you sleep, Stephen?
Just a little.
Since joining NOVA in 2016, Stephen has led collaborations between the college and community across business, government, education, and nonprofit organizations to enhance NOVA's position as a critical partner. Under his leadership, the Workforce Division has implemented labor market intelligence capabilities, which we just heard about, led the Tech Talent Pipeline Initiative, launched a first-of-its-kind apprenticeship program with employers, including Amazon Web Services, and built employer relationships to address regional talent demands. Teresa has over 30 years of experience in education, grant portfolio development, and project management. Before joining NOVA, she was a federal contractor and executive director for nonprofit literacy organizations. She has served on several boards that support community-based solutions to the problems of illiteracy and poverty. So I think we have a couple questions in the chat. Okay, one from Jason Ford Green. Any suggestions on a specific software that would help drill down on STEM demographics within a region?
So I guess when you say drill down, are you talking about trying to figure out the job? Like Burning Glass, you can sort by the type of job. So you could break it down by STEM jobs, by degree type, by skill set. That's probably the one we use the most because it really does allow us to really drill into the type of job, type of sector of the economy that we're trying to really find out the jobs for. And it will really spell out because so many employers post, I'm looking for communication skills. So you see some of the professional skills in addition to the hard skills that students need to know. And so it's been something that we've really, probably the number one software we utilize is Burning Glass for trying to figure out, even to who to focus our attention on to talk to in the employer community. Because if you see someone posting they're hiring or open to hiring people with 2-year degrees with these type of skill sets, with a team of 3 that goes out to meet with employers, I can't have them go after, randomly the 50,000 employers in our region. They really need to be focused on what we're trying to achieve. So if you don't have access to Burning Glass, we're happy to talk more offline with you about what we've used it for. Or Lightcast, sorry, that's your old name.
Yep. I didn't know about Lightcast. I know the old name, Burning Glass. I've used that many times. Okay, you have another question, Stephen. Do you offer the data free to other colleges and the community partners, or do you attach a small fee, such as cost of labor analysis?
Yeah, so for within our region, all our partners, like I mentioned, K-12, workforce boards, economic development agencies, we offer it free of charge. We have had other colleges within our 23 system office ask for help before, and we've attached a small fee because, again, we have to pay for all the software every year, and there's a big expense. So we have done also some private sector work where companies have come to us and want us to do a little market detailed analysis and attached a fee. So we haven't done it for outside our region or our state, but if there's something particular you need some help on a one-off, we're happy to talk with you.
Great, thank you. I have a couple more questions. Stephen, congratulations on NOVA being highlighted in the book, America's Hidden Economic Engines. This is from President Emeriti Sylvia Jenkins. She was president of Moraine Valley Community College for several years. So her question to you is, what industry would you identify as being the most engaged with NOVA that was identified in the book? And is this a model that could be replicated with other colleges or smaller colleges?
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia. And definitely, I think it's something that can be replicated. It's really the infrastructure behind it. I think IT, it's one of our biggest sectors. It's also one of the most challenging to serve. We have a program in Virginia called Fast Forward, so we actually can do upskilling of the workforce at nearly no cost to the employer or individuals to want to give additional IT credentials. The challenge is within our area because of federal contracting, you see a disproportionate number of jobs in IT in Northern Virginia that at a minimum require a bachelor's degree. It's 86% of the jobs postings in Northern Virginia require a bachelor's degree. It's the minimum. You go to other markets, it's a lot lower, but federal contracts sometimes say if you're going to touch a federal contract, you have to have a bachelor's degree. And we've actually been lobbying Congress to sort of make some changes to that law along with a lot of the employers, because it's sort of one of those things where we say there's a lot of open jobs. It's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're open because the credentials are so onerous on a lot of people for these jobs that could be done by associate degrees or people with experience and no degree. So we're working to kind of showcase that. But I came from the Charlotte area. I grew up in Arizona. You look at their IT breakdown, it's more of maybe about 60% of the jobs require IT. So there's a lot more room for a community college to make a dent in that because you don't have those federal contracting requirements. So again, happy to talk offline, but the book is a great tool to kind of give you a roadmap of what the investment, not just at NOVA, to other schools and where we prioritize, which in that slide, and I think you'll get a copy of the deck, it really is making sure you focus on certain industries that's data-driven, and then you've got to build those deep partnerships. Because I couldn't have built the apprenticeship or done some of these pilot projects without really industry working so closely with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Would you be willing, Stephen, to put your email in the chat?
Of course. I will add it now.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move on to Allen Hancock College, and I'll read their bios after their presentation. And I believe I'm passing it over to Dr. McNulty.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending the session. I just wanted to welcome you all, and Erin Creer and I will be discussing our NSF ATE grant focused on agriculture development of programs to match what's needed regionally in our area. Next slide, please. This is our president, Dr. Kevin Walters, and one of our big successes is that when we write a grant, it's the entire college is rooting for the grant. We have a lot of shared governance, and we write grants. My office writes grants for every department and our foundation as well. And it's really a campus-wide acknowledgement of a need that's needed not only to expand or support the education plan or the student equity plan, but also meets the needs for our partners, which might be our high schools, industry, and nonprofits. And we know that grants are one of the strategies that Hancock College uses to change the odds for students. Next slide, please. And Aaron, I don't know if you want to chime in on the need in the agriculture that spurred, this is the data that determined there was a need for our college to expand programs and support not only industry need, but also environmental needs and the community needs to form a stronger economic foundation for our community.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Leanne. Good morning or afternoon, wherever you are, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So yes, when I was first hired as adjunct faculty to teach a sustainable agriculture class, we actually didn't even have a program for agriculture. We had a really strong viticulture and enology program at Allen Hancock College, but we did not have any degrees or certificates associated with anything agriculture related outside of viticulture and enology. And agriculture being the largest economic driver in our entire county, where we grow over 250 specialty crops. So it was really a disservice to our industry partners and our local students to not have programs that could help prepare them for the very diverse job opportunities in agriculture outside of just the grape growing and winemaking. And so that was really the impetus to apply for the grant. We sort of focused on the crop protection and precision agriculture pathways based on sort of my own relationships with the industry and those conversations, knowing what needed to happen. But actually the grant that we were funded it really just spearheaded this entire program, where now we have several degrees and certificates that we give credit to the ATE program for supporting the development of an entire agriculture program at the college. I think we can go to the next slide, please. So I just have some data here that you can look at with enrollment. You can see that there was a significant need, obviously, in the community. We did not have a place. We have extremely large FFA programs, so a lot of students in high school that are studying agriculture to the tune of several thousand in our district. But they didn't have any place to go unless they were able to apply to a four-year university and get in. And for a lot of our students, that's not really reasonable to leave home and to try to find housing outside of the area. And so we were able to address that need and provide those curricular opportunities here. You can see from this graph that in 2018 was when our NSF ATE grant was funded. And so prior to that, we had some enrollment, because students were taking some of the classes, but they weren't associated with a certificate or a degree. And you can see what happened with our enrollment after we were able to establish some of these programs, including a couple of transfer degrees. And even during the COVID pandemic, when overall college enrollment was decreasing, obviously, for across the nation, but our agriculture program continued to expand even in spite of the challenges that we were presented with at that time. Next slide, please. We also we know that there's a significant gap between female and male students generally, well, in employment in agriculture, it's traditionally a very male dominated industry. And so we wanted to look at the numbers and make sure that we were also addressing the need for our female students. You can see that we've sort of closed that gap, and they've grown. The female enrollment in our program has continued to expand, which is also encouraging for us to see. Next slide, please. We are a Hispanic serving institution. I think it's like 75, maybe Leanne can correct me, maybe 80%.
It's 67 or somewhere between 67 and 69%, depending on the semester.
Okay, thank you. And so we wanted to make sure that we were addressing, creating a program that was welcoming for all of our students, population in our community. So you can see that the Hispanic enrollment in the program has really taken off, also, which is good because we have a lot of students who come from families that work in agriculture, and historically there's sort of that those jobs get a bad rap, so to speak, because they think of field labor. So it was our job, part of our job with this grant was to do a lot of outreach and information sharing about the very diverse and wonderful job opportunities in the agriculture industry outside of farm labor. Next slide, please. So I don't know, Leanne, did you want to jump in here?
Sure. So the big question is, how do you know when it's time? First, what we do in the grants office is we keep our finger on the pulse of not only what the college's mission, vision, and goals are, what their student equity plan has within it, and then we really touch base on a monthly basis with each of the departments to make sure we know where they want to expand, what their plan is, and why. And we need to have a champion that's willing to set aside time to work with the grants department to guide us as we're writing the grant. Because as you know, most grants departments, if you have a grants department, some colleges don't have one, but even those that do, just because we are grant writers doesn't mean we're experts in all these diverse fields. So it's really important to have a champion that's willing to set aside time to work with us. They usually have the connections to industry, and we help build the connections as well with the K-12 and high schools specifically, as well as the 4-year. And so having a faculty champion is really important for our to expand programming, because they're the ones that ultimately do the work. We become, in the grants office, we just become support. Just like the grants that we're writing, we help support with research. We help collect data with institutional effectiveness or our research office at the college, and help pull data from much of the same sources that Stephen just mentioned earlier. We use CCPI-Cast and Bureau of Labor Statistics, Census, as well as we have nonprofits in our area that work on economic development. We have very close ties with 2 of those, which is REACH and Econ Alliance. So once you have that champion, you put the goals together. I have another team member who's a grants analyst that kind of goes through all the things that are expected, all the documents, and make sure all of our ducks are in a row. And also they serve as an editor and a second set of eyes. And most importantly, we also look for enthusiastic industry support, and make sure that what we're doing is meeting the needs for our students to earn more and get a livable wage salary, and that they are getting to industry with the skills the industry needs to grow and thrive. Next slide, please. Erin, would you like to take over this slide?
So I would just say, yes, we knew that there was demand in the industry locally, and so we created these programs. A lot of the certificates have been really well received by our returning student and adult student population that it's unrealistic for them to try to go to a four-year university. We've had some students that are now, I get text messages weekly from students who earned our certificates in crop protection and pest control advisor certification, who are excitedly now official pest control advisors. And I would just say that the data is super important. Obviously, it's critical to have that information, but I would say that equally important, or maybe equally important, is just having that spark and that passion in the, like Leanne said, in the faculty and in the entire college, having the vision and the willingness to sort of take a leap and a risk, and hope that it all works out. So I think that might lead us to our next slide here.
Mhm. And once the grant's awarded, there is that passion, there is that excitement, but many of our faculty champions haven't run grants before. So the college needs to be prepared to support them throughout the entire process of the grant, putting together planning documents, how you're going to gather the data to show that you're meeting the objectives that you said you were going to meet, budget preparation, and documents that need to be submitted into business services to have a budget to draw from, and using how to, even basic things like how to make purchases and do budget transfers. Those aren't things that are innate, and a lot of the programs that the colleges use are pretty challenging and unintuitive. So we help with that piece. We help create timelines and check in with them to see how they're doing on meeting the activities that they said they were going to do. Curriculum development. We offer support in if there's not enough funding for professional development and other supports, we leverage other funding at the college campus and help faculty find that funding. We go through the academic process to institute the class offerings. There's a lot of shared governance. So before we write a grant, we get it approved through several entities that are touched upon: facilities, college council, academic senate, etc. And then afterwards, we keep everybody in the loop. We have to have that support to get class offerings on the books, and purchasing supplies and equipment. We have to work with facilities and coordinating with public affairs to get the word out. We have a new grant and a new program to students, faculty, staff, and the community, as well as industry. We have a career center that we coordinate with, and we try to get internships, especially for our low-income first generation student population. We try to build that social capital and network to get their foot in the door. And we begin college classes and that pathway into college in the high schools. Also, trying to create internships. We really veer away from any unpaid internships. Our students are working and going to school. We have a high population of low-income students, and our community is a low-income community. So we really seek out paid work experience to build the social and professional capital. Okay, next slide, please. You know what, Erin, this is more probably more on your end of expertise.
And Dr. Hawthorne, how are we doing on time? Do we need to?
I'm watching it. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for checking.
I forgot to be paying attention, so I thought I'd better check in with you. So yeah, with the challenges, we have the vision, we have the excitement, the passion. We know that there's a need. Infrastructure has been a challenge for us. We create an entirely new program, and then it's like, okay, well, where are we going to hold all the plant science labs? Where's the animal science class going to be? So we've had challenges with that. We have gracious life and physical sciences faculty who shared their space with us, but nonetheless, that's one of the things that that you have to consider following the implementation of a grant. Next slide, please. Oh, go ahead, Leanne.
Oh no, you can go ahead and share this.
So, like Leanne had mentioned, she already sort of mentioned these different entities here. We have an entire team of people that really help to ensure the success of the grant. And it's important for establishing sustainability of the program. Obviously, that we don't want to create a program that's not going to be around after the conclusion of the grant. So all of these stakeholders become important partners in the process. You can go to the next slide unless Leanne wanted to add anything.
Oh, no, that's good. You did good.
So I think this is just mentioning, some of the things we did. We intended to create a certificate and degree in crop protection and precision agriculture. But like I said, it ended up becoming a much bigger beast than that, which was fine because it needed to happen. So we also have an agricultural plant science transfer degree, an agricultural business transfer degree. And then we split the crop protection into 2 certificates, crop protection and pest control advisor preparation, and then the precision agriculture as well. So this grant was really served, like I said before, as an impetus to create an entire program based on the various needs of our local industry partners. Next slide, please. Did you want to add anything about institutionalization, Leanne?
No, I like I said, it takes somebody like Aaron who is excited about the project and willing to jump through the hoops it takes for faculties to get classes on the books and accredited. And really, it takes the entire college to work together as a team and leverage each other's strengths and support to get these certificates and degrees established. And once they're established, institutionalization is dependent on enrollments, and then we can keep it going and just keep growing it. And then we write other grants if we need extra equipment and supplies or growth in different areas. And next slide, please.
I'm going to pause here just 1 second. We have a comment in the chat that I think is timely. So I just want to read it out loud and let you respond to it. So this is from Patricia Maloney. Patricia feels we need to mention the importance of internal evaluation, NSF annual reporting, and the AT annual survey. Do you want to address those?
Definitely that is a requirement and also an important part of receiving an NSF ATE grant. And that helps us to assess, internally the project and how it's going. Working closely, of course, with our grant evaluator becomes important to get that external feedback. We had an external evaluator who helps to ensure that because I sometimes see it through a myopic lens, because I'm kind of deep in the weeds here, but to have that external support. And then I would just say that I have had such success and an unending support from the ATE folks, and that it's been really, because I didn't know anything I was doing. I came from the industry. I was teaching 1 part-time class, and they asked me if I wanted to be a PI of a grant that we were going to apply for, and I said, "What's a PI?" So that's how unaware I was of the situation. So the ATE program has so much support, tremendous support, to take that, to give me the sort of the detailed knowledge that I needed in order to make it successful from the grant perspective. I don't know if Leanne wanted to add anything to that.
Just how important it is when you first get awarded the grant to touch base not only with the project monitor and build that relationship and support that they offer there, which is wide and vast, but also to set up the systems necessary to collect information and data about enrollment and successes, retention, persistence, and employment in just to have help the faculty develop data collection instruments so that from the get-go they're preparing for reporting, self-reflection, and looking at outcomes. Next slide, please.
Okay. I think that's it, right? So what I'd like to do at this moment, we're kind of can go about 5 more hours. My goodness, 5 more minutes. But I want to stop here and pause for a second to do a little infomercial for Sippy STEM project. So we have 2 more webcasts coming up that you might be interested in. Mark your calendars. So Friday, March 22nd at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to do a CCPI-Cast on community college collaborations with business and industry. And then in April, on Friday, April 26th, again at 1 p.m. Eastern, we have fellows that we sponsor through the SIPI project, and it's a unique opportunity. So we have 2 cohorts of fellows right now, so you'll hear from both of those. So what I'd like to do at this point is launch the poll. So as you're launching the poll, I'm going to read the impressive bios from Alan Hancock, and then we'll open it up for questions. All right, let me launch the poll here. Okay. So we have about 6 questions. Some of them are very easy to answer, and we have some open-ended questions. So while you are all doing that, I see we might have a question in the chat there, but this is the bio for Dr. McNulty. She brings 28 years of educational experience, vision, school reform, grant writing, and leadership to the Central Coast of California. As a co-author of the Culturally Responsive Higher Education Curriculum Assessment Tool and author of the Culturally Responsive and Humanizing Organizational Assessment, Dr. McNulty provides the instruments and guidance necessary to transform higher education institutions into organizations that affirm cultural strengths, response to cultural needs, and connect to populations served by affirming the value of diverse populations, experiences, and historical contributions. Okay, there's a lot more. I could go on and on. Very impressive. Okay, Professor Aaron Cryer is the coordinator and assistant professor of agriculture at Allen Hancock College and has been in her faculty position for the past 7 years. The first 4 years were spent as a part-time faculty member. Aaron is now a full-time tenure-track faculty member. Aaron's industry background is in field research testing, pesticide efficacy. She currently teaches plant science, sustainable agriculture, animal science, agribusiness, integrated pest management, and introduction to agricultural studies and careers. As you heard, Aaron was the principal investigator, very first time, and did a great job, who implemented the ATE grant, Creating Precision Agriculture and Crop Protection Career Pathways via industry partners. Okay, so let's see what we have. We have 25 folks weighing in on this poll, so I'll give it maybe a few more moments while I look into the chat box here. All right. Okay, Teresa. Okay. So Teresa has some advice. Would you like to come off mute, Teresa, and share that advice about if you haven't interacted with the National Science Foundation?
Sure, and I ended up putting it in the general chat. I didn't realize I just had you on the first.
Oh, okay. I just saw the direct chat. So what I'm gonna close the poll here and end the poll and let you do your thing, Teresa.
Well, I don't know how many people today have never received an NSF or an AT specific grant. So that's really what I want you to know is, unlike other agencies, they discuss the idea with you even before you write a proposal and will give you guidance on whether or not that is an idea that fits their priorities, even when you're looking at the RFP, because they're quite different, being so open-ended within certain content areas. They also have an incredible amount of resources on their site. They hold webinars across the range of, again, how to work with them and how to apply, and which you should be prepared to do through running successful projects. So that site has a lot of resources. Don't hesitate to directly contact any of the program officers listed in any NOFO and feel them out about an idea you have or how you're wondering your college can be competitive if you've never been part of NSF grants before.
Thank you, Teresa. Yes, and I notice a a message in the poll from my colleague, Dr. Elizabeth Tellis, who was the founding director of the ATE program 30 years ago. And she wants to mention that other support within the ATE community are mentoring initiatives.
Mhm.
She works with the Mentor Up initiative out of California. I mentioned in the beginning I was principal investigator of Force ATE, where we specialize in computing and cybersecurity proposals, including artificial intelligence. So there are other ones out there. And if you go to the CCPI website under resources, we have a list of all those mentoring initiatives: Pathways to Innovation, Project Vision, Mentor Connect. It was the first one that we have. Okay. Okay. So any last comments? Stephen? Put you on the
No,
spot.
yeah, there you go. I put my email in the chat. So please, if you have any questions about the data sets we use or how we've set up our system, we're happy to have some offline conversations with you at any time. But thanks for joining today.
Thank you, Stephen, for participating. Leanne, any words of wisdom?
Yeah, I think that the resources that Teresa pointed out on the NSF site is really, really helpful. And also they pick up the phone. They answer the emails and they pick up the phone. And it's quite remarkable the amount of support that NSF, and I think specifically ATE, because they know that community colleges have less resources and support in that way. And so they're really excellent guides. There's even opportunities sometimes for them to review portions and give guidance. And so that it's really a phenomenal program. And I think it's definitely worth applying and getting these this funding to support the development of programs that are in need in your area. And you have Aaron and my email on this presentation. I can also post it in the chat if it's necessary. But we're happy to answer any further questions and provide any guidance that you all might need. So
Yeah, you know, it might be helpful if you don't mind putting your email in the chat, both of you, and Teresa, if you're willing to do that as well. I know, or you can just have it all funneled through him and he can get in touch, whatever you prefer. So so that concludes today's CCPI-Cast. Oh, wait, there may be another question in the chat. Oh, it's you're putting your email. Okay, great. Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for spending your Friday morning or afternoon with us, and hopefully we'll see you again on another CCPI-Cast on March 22nd is our next one. So if you go to the CCPI site, you'll see current events, and we'll have an RSVP form for you to sign up. Okay, all right. Have a good weekend, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and thank you so much to our expert panelists.